Hey, this is Trout Pitting. Thanks for joining me. Welcome back to the 9 essential skills for tight line and Euro nymphing. We're going to talk today about the strike zone because nothing catches more trout. I mean it, nothing catches more trout. Doesn't matter where you are in any trout river than getting the nymphs down in that zone. It's a cushion of water really close to the bottom. From the bottom, maybe up 10 inches. We're going to talk about this. A cushion of water that's going slower than everything else. So all the good things in a river happen down in that strike zone. If you spend a lot of time there with your nymphs, good things happen. Now, all the other skills, what are we on, number 6 now? All the other 5 skills set us up to be able to read the sighter and locate that strike zone, to find that strike zone without touching the bottom. So you can get down and kind of stop guessing. You're gonna know where the flies are right down in there. Reading for the strike zone, finding it, locating it is an absolute game changer. All right, are you ready? Here we go. So I guide a lot, and when I'm guiding, I often hear back from people, weeks later, or even at the end of the trip, they'll say that strike zone, learning to find that strike zone, was kind of the most important concept that they learned throughout the day, most important skill. When I'm giving presentations, I kind of hear the same thing. So, trout will eat anywhere in the column. We're talking about from top to the bottom, right? The water column. You got your riverbed with strike zone right above it, middle and top. Trout are going to do what they want to do, no matter what we all say and what we expect them to do. But again, day to day, if you locate that strike zone, and that's your baseline, you deviate from that zone. Even when I find that trout are eating mid-column, or maybe they're eating emergers, and they are getting them right under the surface. By finding that strike zone, then I have control over everything. I understand where my flies are. So the strike zone is a cushion of water right near the riverbed. Think about this. Got the riverbed, and then just above it, and I'm gonna say 4, 5, 6, maybe 9 or 10 inches tall. The strike zone's it's not 2 feet tall. It might be a foot tall. What determines the strike zone, let's say how tall it is how big the rocks are, how big the tree parts are. It's a cushion of water going slower because of the friction of the riverbed. It's like its own little river down there. It's its own little layer, right? And so the water's coming downstream, it has to bump into this rock, slows down, has to go around it. Bumps into the next rock, slows down, goes above it. And so if the rocks are, let's say, this big, then your strike zone's probably about that tall. If your rocks are bigger, your strike zone on average is gonna be a little taller. If you have just a pebbly kind of, just little rocks for a riverbed and sand and stuff like that, there's still a layer of water down there. It's going to be narrower, but that's where all the good things are happening. So we know what the strike zone is now, and it is a cushion of water that's going slower, often a lot slower than that top current. We can't see that bottom current. I can see through the riverbed right now, but I can't tell you exactly how slow that strike zone is compared to the top, but I do know that it's going slower. And we're going to learn to read by getting the nymph down. We're going to learn to read the speed of that sighter. Well, read the speed of the current, that strike zone speed, by reading the speed of the sighter. So all the good things in a river happen down there. The bait fish are not in mid-column. Think about that. When the bait fish is down there, sculpins and crayfish too, and black-nosed dace, small trout, all the life is down on the bottom in the strike zone, or down on the bottom specifically. The bugs are down there. Think about a mayfly. It spends the whole year, first as an egg, then as an immature nymph, and even as an adult nymph down there. Its whole life is down on the bottom. And then for one moment of one day, it's in the middle. Unless things really get tossed and turned, a river gets, things will get bumped around. Life forms, yes, they'll get dislodged and get bumped around. They might be up in the middle column for a moment or two, throughout that year, right? Caddis, the same thing. And I mean it, bait fish are not in the middle, they're exposed. So the trout are down where that food is too. And the trout don't want to be up in the middle or up near the surface because they're exposed. Again, we're talking about a river. In a lake, you got to realize things are really different. I'm not talking about still water. We're talking about a trout river. And they're not going to spend their time in the middle of the column very much. They'll come up and eat something there. Their focus might be up, and then they're back down to the strike zone. So that trout has its belly on the riverbed, hovering right there in the strike zone. I guarantee that's where it spends almost all of its day. It'd come up and eat a dry fly, goes right back down into the strike zone. About the only time I can think of where I'm not seeing trout just holding in the strike zone, but I do see them hovering up top, is like a spinner fall in the tail out upstream there. You know, they'll just hover right above and pick off a spinner, I see that a lot. I'm looking for that like when I'm fishing trico spinners. But again, our baseline is getting down into that strike zone, knowing where things are. Even when I'm riding 2 flies, I want to get that point fly, or my heaviest part of the system, down in the strike zone, and then my upper fly can be out of it. Hey, I want to thank Trout Routes for sponsoring this video. Trout Routes is an angler's app. Starts with mapping software. Really, it's a lot like Google Maps, but then with all the stuff that you as an angler would want to know. CFS data, you know, the river flows, the temperature. It'll show you a lot of stuff about special regs areas, Class A wild trout, blue ribbon trout streams, all that kind of stuff. Access points, fly shops, aggregates all that data, gives it to you right in the Trout Routes app. It's really great for the traveling angler, but it's also really good. I mean, if you open up the Trout Routes app to your home area, the stuff you think you know really well, I bet you'll find something new. So you can use the code TROUTBITTEN for 20% off your pro membership at maps.troutroutes.com. Thanks to Trout Routes. Thank you. Yeah. So everything we've done to this point gets us to this moment where we can really read the sighter and locate that strike zone. If the other stuff isn't in place, if our angle and approach is too far out, we can't trust the sighter. If we haven't recovered slack and we don't find that contact, we can't trust the sighter. That trust on the sighter, no, it's key. If the sighter's kind of wavy, I can't know where my flies are. I can't trust where my flies are. If I have control over the whole system, I have that knowledge. I'm not guessing anymore. If I'm casting across stream, and I'm outside of that golden ratio, 1 rod length over, 2.5 rod lengths up, then I can't trust the sighter. Because if I'm casting across, then I'm gonna get that cross lead, which is drag, and drag will slow the sighter down. Now here, that's the point, is that you need a slow sighter to know that you got down in the strike zone. As I'm recovering the slack here, I'm tucking it in, angle and approach is good. I'm in 1 lane. I recovered slack, so I have contact on my sighter right there, right away. And then I'm looking at the speed of the sighter. And I can trust it because all the other elements, all the other things that we've talked about are in place. When it slows down, like I can't slow the sighter down from here. I can't slow the nymph down from here. I can allow the fly to fall, the weight, the fly to fall into a zone that is slower, a cushion of water, that layer, that strike zone. That's slower than what I can see up above. So I'm comparing the sighter speed with the topwater speed. That's the key. When you see the sighter go slower than the top current, you're in the strike zone. And you gotta trust it. Again, if every other element is in place, right there I slowed down. If everything else is right, and I got my contact there and now I'm reading the speed, then I know where my fly is. I'm not guessing. And this is really what opens up the fishing aspect. You're down in, and then I want to glide through. Let's talk about that really in the next video. We talk about how to lead through the strike zone, and even if we want to be that low. Remember, I'm not saying here that we always want to be down in the strike zone, but we want to be able to find it really on any drift. And by knowing, you know, by having that reference, again, everything else really opens up. So I'm making the cast. Let's look at this a little closer. Look, I got contact on the sighter. There, it slowed down for me. And once it slows down, I know I'm low enough, and essentially I don't want it to drop anymore. If that's my goal, is just ride through the strike zone. So, making the cast, got everything in control. Right there, it slowed down. And then once it slowed down, I'm bringing it through, right? Making the cast, tucking it in, control. I'm looking and I'm reading this, there it is. I'm reading the sighter for the speed. And there's my slowdown. So even without touching, I know where the system is. I know that my weight, my fly is there it is down in the strike zone. So my goal is not to touch very much. When I'm trying to get strike zone rides, I'm just trying to glide through that zone. The perfect drift in this case, if I was really trying to get strike zone rides, would drop down, I'm gonna say within a couple seconds. Fly falls, falls, falls. Once I see the slowdown, then I start to lead through. That's if I'm trying to do a strike zone ride. So I'm really looking for that slowdown, and I can trust it. Once it slows down, it has dropped enough. If I don't do something, it's gonna fall, 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 slow down, strike zone, touch. And then I kind of want to set, because I'm not sure if I've touched the bottom or it's a fish. So as I'm watching this sighter and I see this slowdown, I also will sometimes see a little jiggle to the sighter, a little bit of this. And I guess I used to think that that was bottom contact. I've learned that it's not. It's not always. Every time, if you get that nice stable sighter ride and you see a little bit of this, a little bit of this, it's not necessarily the bottom. The strike zone's kind of complex down there, right? It's not just this perfect little layer that's just going uniform. Again, it's hitting rocks and going around this way, hitting rocks and kind of coming up. So if you have nice contact on the sighter, and let's say you're not overweighted a bunch or underweighted, you will see some freedom to that sighter. And we talk about slipping contact, but I'm talking about having nice contact at the sighter. You know you're down in the strike zone because the whole thing slows down, and you can see just a little bit of wiggle. It's not always the bottom, like right there. It's just gliding through the strike zone. And then you do touch, right? That's pretty. Look at that sun on the bank. It's one of the prettiest spots I know of. Love it. Oh, I almost put it in a tree. So that strike zone slowdown is often very subtle. Maybe that strike zone layer is not gone all that much slower than the top current that we're comparing it against. So you're gonna see a very subtle slowdown. You still gotta trust it, right? Other times it's a very dramatic slowdown. I'll say like in the fastest and deepest water, you get again pretty dramatic difference. When it slows down, it's going like half the speed of the top current. You got to trust it in both ways. A couple more things then to talk through here. Even if I don't want my nymphs all the way on the bottom, let's say that I kind of determine that trout's focus is starting to come up through. They're looking up a little bit. I often will take my point fly and make sure that I get it down in the strike zone, and I'm gonna get strike zone rides. But then I'm riding my tag fly, let's say 2 feet up, and with that tag, well, the tag's gonna be out of the strike zone. But if I get my nymph, my point nymph, to slow down in the strike zone, then the tag fly also slows down. And you'll sometimes get hit after hit after hit there. It's a great way to approach the situation when you kind of do realize that trout are looking up a little bit. You could also use a tracking approach to make that happen. But you think about that, it's a very unique thing. You can get, I can't think of any other way to really get your tag fly, or a fly, let's say, that's riding mid-column, to slow down like that, kind of gradually and perhaps naturally slow down. Maybe when mayflies and caddisflies are coming up through the column, if they are swimming against the current at all, then they'd be slowing down. Maybe that's the trigger for the trout. I think a lot of times when a mayfly and a caddisfly are emerging, they probably swim with the current more than against it. But even just as they're swimming up, maybe that presentation I just talked about does trigger that trout. For whatever reason, you'll see it over and over. Lots of times too, I've had that happen, and they're eating the tag fly, eating the tag fly, eating the tag fly. So I think, okay, let me put just 1 fly or 2 flies with a slower drop, keep 2 flies above the fish, and often the action stops. So there's something about that slowdown. There's that subtle difference in speed of that tag fly sometimes. Again, using the strike zone as a reference point to kind of understand about everything that's going on underneath. You're looking for that slowdown. You're looking for that downshift. You're looking for what my buddy Matt Gray calls engagement with the bottom. Again, it's not the riverbed. It's the cushion of water just above it. It's also imperfect. As you ride through that strike zone, you're gonna hit a tall rock. I think it's why it can be frustrating. You think, oh, I'm getting this perfect strike zone ride, and then you bang into something, and you got to set. You don't have to set on everything, but whatever. You're gonna get stuck up there. It can be frustrating because it is an imperfect thing. You're in the strike zone, that's great, but you can't always get that just perfect glide through. However, I'll say this too. If you are close enough, the closer you are, the more you can read that water. If I'm trying to cast 30 feet away, I can't see that water. I can't see the details of that riverbed nearly as much as I can at 25 feet away. 20, 25 feet away, I can very much see that there's a depression right there. That pothole's a little deeper. I can see there's a rock and I don't want to run into the rock, so as I'm gliding through, I'm gonna go to the right of the rock. There's a lot to it, right? But finding the strike zone eliminates a lot of guesswork about what's going on underneath. All right, there it is, find the strike zone. Next time we're gonna talk about leading the flies versus guiding the flies versus tracking the flies. All different things you can do, really though in reference to the strike zone, so find that. Also check out the Fish and Film series here on the Trout Bitten YouTube channel. Those are the fishing videos, okay? So fish hard, friends. Have fun out there.